I used to think gym workouts were just part of the grind, something you did and moved on from. That is, until that afternoon at the community gym, in the locker room, when he pulled me aside. I didn't know what was coming, but what happened next left me speechless. It became one of the most unforgettable moments of my life. Let me take you back to where it began. It was the summer after graduation. I'd just started taking my fitness seriously, not because I was passionate about it, but because I didn't know what else to do with all my restless energy. The gym became part of my routine. Something to pass the time. He was a personal trainer there. Carter. Early 30s. Tall. Built. The kind of guy who didn't have to try to command attention, he just had it. People respected him, not because he yelled or barked orders, but because he was focused, present. Quietly intense. That day had been brutal. We'd just finished a small group training session, and I was dead on my feet, legs burning, lungs tight. I could barely make it across the gym floor. When the final set wrapped, most of the guys headed straight for the showers. But I hung back, leaning against the wall, trying to catch my breath. I didn't even notice he was still there until I heard his voice, low, steady, pulling me back into my body. "You good?" I looked up at him, breath still ragged, sweat dripping down my back. "Yeah," I managed, wiping my forehead. "Just dead." He smirked slightly, just enough to shift something in the air. "Pushed you too hard." I laughed, breathless. "You always do." He chuckled, quiet and unreadable. "You kept up, though. You've got more in you than you think." It was a simple statement. But coming from him, it felt heavier. Real. Like it meant something. By then, the locker room had mostly cleared. The voices were fading, doors slamming shut in the distance, until it was just the two of us in the quiet. I hadn't even realized how empty it had become until I glanced toward the lockers again. And noticed the space between us had gotten smaller. "You should stretch before you head out," he said, voice firm but casual, like he was still in coach mode. "It'll help with the soreness." I nodded, but when I stepped forward, my legs gave a little. Weak from the workout. His hand caught my arm. Just enough pressure to steady me. And for a second, that's all I could feel, his grip. The heat of his skin. The scent of sweat and faint cologne clinging to him. My thoughts blurred. "You okay?" he asked again, quieter this time. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed it. I should have pulled away. Laughed it off. Walked out and called it a day. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there, held by nothing but his hand and something else, something wordless. Unnamed. A tension I didn't understand but couldn't ignore. My heart thudded like it wasn't sure if this was a warning or a dare. And then it happened. He didn't move. Neither did I. The air thickened, like time slowed just enough for me to notice everything, the way his fingers stayed on my arm, the way his breath hitched slightly, the way his eyes didn't look away. I told myself it was nothing. That I was tired. That my mind was just reacting to too much adrenaline. But then, he didn't let go. If anything, his grip tightened. Slightly. Like he was waiting to see if I'd flinch. If I'd step back. I didn't. My breath was shallow. The silence between us grew louder. The locker room faded away until it felt like we were the only two people in the world. Then, barely perceptible, he shifted. Closer. Not enough for anyone to call it anything, but enough to send something electric down my spine. A tilt of the head. A flicker of hesitation. Then his hand dropped, the contact gone. But my skin still remembered. He took a step back, expression unreadable. Calculating. Like he'd crossed a line in his head but hadn't decided whether to speak it out loud. I didn't trust my voice. Couldn't even form a sentence. My chest was tight, breath. Ate shallow. I was afraid if I said something, anything, it would make the moment real. Then he exhaled. Measured. controlled. And just like that, the stillness cracked. "You should get changed," he said, voice low and steady. And the moment dissolved. At least, that's what I thought. But I was wrong. That wasn't the end. That was the beginning. The tension snapped so fast it made my head spin. Like the last 30 seconds had been a hallucination, something I imagined in the haze of exhaustion. He turned, walked to the back office, didn't look at me again. Like nothing had happened. And maybe nothing had. Maybe it was all in my head. But as I turned to my locker, hands shaking slightly, skin still humming from where he'd touched me, I knew something had shifted. I forced myself to breathe. To act normal. But the way my hands trembled as I reached for my shirt? That betrayed me. I could hear him in the background, drawer opening, chair creaking. He was still here. I wasn't alone. I stared at the small, dented mirror on my locker door. My face looked the same. But something in my eyes didn't. I needed to leave. I yanked my gym shirt off, the fabric clinging to my damp skin, and tossed it into my bag. My hands moved to my waistband, then. "Hey!" His voice cut through the silence. My whole body went still. I turned. He was leaning against the frame of his office door, arms crossed. Relaxed. Too relaxed. He held something in his hand. "You left your water bottle," he said, lifting it slightly. I blinked. "Oh. Right. Thanks." I stepped forward to take it. But he didn't hand it to me. Not right away. His finger stayed curled around it for a beat longer, like he wasn't done. Like there was something else sitting behind his eyes. "Coach," I said, the word sharp in my throat. That seemed to snap him out of it. He dropped the bottle into my hand. "Be more mindful next time. Can't be leaving stuff behind." I nodded, even though we both knew that was a lie. I never left anything behind. I turned to my locker again, hoping he'd go. That this was over. But he stayed there. Watching. Waiting. Like the moment wasn't finished yet. Changing in the locker room used to be just routine, something I'd done 100 times without thinking. But now, with him still nearby, everything felt different. My skin prickled. I could feel his presence, not overtly, but enough to make me hyper-aware of every move I made. My pulse thudded in my ears as I reached for my clean shirt, pulling it over my head quickly, then grabbing my shorts. I was determined not to let my hands shake. Not to show that any of this was getting to me. "How's work going?" he asked suddenly, his voice cutting through the quiet. I blinked, caught off guard. It's fine, I guess. Same as always." He hummed, like he was weighing that answer. "You're not far from 20 now, right?" "Yeah," I nodded, glancing at him. My fingers gripped the water bottle tighter. "Just a few more months." He nodded, his expression unreadable. "Any plans after that?" I shrugged. "Not sure yet. Maybe some courses, maybe just stick with the job for now. I haven't really figured it out." He tilted his head slightly. "You should think about it." There was something about the way he said it that made my stomach twist. It sounded like advice, normal advice. But the way he looked at me made it feel heavier. Like he wasn't just talking about plans or careers. Like he meant something else entirely. I gave a soft laugh, trying to shake the feeling. "Yeah. My family keeps saying the same thing." He smirked faintly at that, then pushed off the doorway. "They're not wrong," he said. He took a step forward, slow, deliberate. Just close enough that I could smell his cologne. It was subtle and warm, but it made my head swim. "You're a sharp kid," he added, his voice lower now. "You've got potential. You just need to figure out where you want to put it." I swallowed hard. My throat was dry. "Yeah, I'll think about it." For a moment, we stood there, too close, too quiet. The air between us buzzing with things unspoken. Then he stepped back, nodding toward the exit. You should head out. Don't want to miss your ride. I nodded, stiffly. My pulse was still uneven as I grabbed my bag and slung it over my shoulder. I didn't even look back as I passed him, though I could feel his eyes linger just a moment longer than they should have. I didn't let myself breathe until I stepped out into the hallway, into the rhythm of everyday life. Distant chatter, the echo of footsteps, the scrape of sneakers across tile. But the moment from earlier clung to me, tight and heavy. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Just a conversation. Just a moment. But I knew better. As I walked toward the exit, heart still hammering, his gaze still pressed against my skin like it hadn't let go, I gripped the strap of my bag a little tighter. Students buzzed around me, voices blending into a dull hum, but I wasn't really hearing any of it. I kept replaying the way he looked at me, the tone in his voice, quiet, too careful. Like he was holding something back. I forced myself to let it go, to focus on the rest of the day. The hours passed in a blur. When the end finally came, I was more than ready to get out. I stuffed my things into my bag, only half listening as my friends talked about weekend plans. I nodded along just enough to seem present. Hey, you okay? My friend Jason nudged me with his elbow. Who? I blinked, snapping out of it. You've been weird today, he said, squinting. Extra weird. You sick or something? No, I said quickly. Just tired. Jason studied me for a second like he didn't buy it. But he didn't push. You coming to grab food or what? I hesitated. A part of me wanted to go, wanted to drown out the lingering weight in my chest. But the rest of me, the part that felt raw and off balance, just wanted to be alone. Nah, I finally said. Think I'm heading home. He rolled his eyes. Lame. All right, whatever. See you tomorrow. I waved half-heartedly and slipped out. I moved quickly through the hallway, tension tightening in my chest. I didn't know what I was running from, just that I needed to move. But then, just as I stepped outside, I heard it again. My name. Hey. I froze. My fingers clenched tighter around the strap of my bag as I turned. He was standing near the gym entrance, arms crossed, that same unreadable look on his face. Got a second? My pulse faltered. I thought about pretending I hadn't heard him. About walking away. But I knew that wouldn't work. So I nodded. Yeah. He tilted his head toward the gym doors. Come help me with something real quick. I hesitated. I was just about to leave. Won't take long, he said. Easy. But there was something behind his tone, something firm. I swallowed. Okay. I followed him inside. The doors clicked shut behind us, muting the sounds of the outside world. The gym was quiet now. Empty. The bleachers folded up. The overhead lights threw long shadows across the floor. He led the way toward the equipment room, that small corner space with a desk and storage racks. The faint hum of the air conditioning was the only sound between us. Grab those mats, he asked, nodding toward a stack by the wall. I nodded, grateful for the task, something to focus on. I bent down and dragged one toward the center of the room, muscles tense from the day. I didn't even realize he had moved closer until I felt it, a hand on my shoulder. I froze. You all right? His voice was low. Close. Yeah, I said, swallowing. Just tired. His fingers lingered a second longer, then slipped away. He stepped around me, now leaning casually against the wall. You seemed a little off earlier. Yeah, I said with a half laugh. Just a long day. He watched me for a moment. You ever talk to anyone about your future? I frowned. What do you mean? Your plans, he said. You ever think about what you want to do next? I shrugged. I mean, sometimes. I just haven't figured it out yet. He nodded slowly. You ever think about coaching? I blinked. No, not really. You should. I hesitated. Why? Because you've got something, he said. Not just for sports. For people. You've got potential. There was something in the way he said it. I didn't know what it was, but it landed deep. I laughed nervously. I'm not sure that's really my thing. You never know, he said. Might surprise yourself. The way he looked at me then, steady, intent, made my stomach twist. I cleared my throat and stepped back. I should probably get going. My mom's waiting. He nodded. All right. But just as I turned, his voice stopped me. You know you can talk to me, right? His voice was softer now. Gentle. If you ever need anything. I nodded stiffly. Yeah. Thanks. And then I walked out. I didn't stop until I was outside, until the cool air hit my face, until the pressure in my chest finally eased. But even then, part of me hoped for something. Even though I didn't know what it was yet. I told myself it was nothing. Just kindness. Just concern. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. And whatever came next. I wasn't ready for it. I always thought working at the gym would be just another way to earn credits and pass the time, until that afternoon when Coach pulled me aside. I didn't see it coming. I didn't expect the way a few quiet words in the locker room could leave me feeling unsteady. It wasn't anything obvious, just a shift in the air, a longer pause, the kind of look that lingered a second too long. But it changed something in me. Let me take you back. I was in my final year of college, not particularly athletic but good enough to fake it. The gym internship was part of my degree, and I mostly kept to myself, stacking weights, wiping down equipment, timing drills. Just trying to stay invisible. Coach wasn't like the others. He didn't bark orders or show off. He carried himself with this calm intensity, like every word mattered, like he saw things other people didn't. That day had been brutal. Back-to-back circuits. I pushed harder than usual, maybe to impress him. Maybe just to see if he'd notice. By the time it ended, I could barely stand. I was the last one in the locker room. The others had cleared out, their laughter echoing down the hall. I stayed behind, catching my breath, half-draped over a bench with my shirt clinging to my skin. You all right? His voice was low. Quiet. It cut through the buzzing in my ears. I looked up, startled to find him leaning against the wall, arms crossed, gaze unreadable. Yeah, I said, wiping the sweat off my forehead. Just dead. He let out a quiet breath that wasn't quite a laugh. Pushed you too hard. I managed a grin. You always do. He studied me for a second longer than he needed to. Then he nodded, like he'd decided something. You kept up. You've got more in you than you think. It was a simple thing to say. But the way he said it, steady, certain, like he meant it, it stayed with me. I realized then, we were alone. The room had emptied. The sounds of the gym faded behind us. The air felt thicker somehow, closer.